faith and those who live it. I'm your host, Renee Kranz. In the studio with me today is a favorite of ours, Deacon Bill Radio. Hello, Deacon Radio.
Hello, Renee. Thanks for having me on.
We haven't had you on for a while, and that is to our detriment. Let me just say that. We had Deacon Radio on several years ago to tell his own story. That was how he got his call to become a deacon, and to talk about the church militant, which is a very popular episode from way back. Go in, check it out. But we love having Deacon Radio here. He's going to talk today about the Shroud of Turin. We're in the Easter season. This is a great time to talk about this. There are new things, the way I understand it, new discoveries on this?
Yes.
Great. So we're going to find out about some of those. Deacon, will you first just tell us just a little bit about yourself in case someone in the diocese doesn't know who you are?
Certainly. So, grew up Catholic, mostly in Minnesota.
Okay.
Met my wife in college, and we've been married this summer for 53 years.
Oh, my gosh. That's not possible. Come on.
3 boys, several grandchildren, and I was ordained by Bishop Swain in 2015, so next month it'll be 10 years.
Wow.
And Bishop assigned me to the cathedral, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah. Do you live around nearby the cathedral or just in Sioux Falls?
I live out by Brandon.
Oh, it's not even close. Well, I mean, it's not that far, I guess. Okay, good. So you probably see Deacon Radio on Sunday TV Mass once in a while, because you do once a month, once every couple months?
About that, yeah.
Once a month, yeah. Okay, Deacon, what got you interested in the Shroud of Turin, which includes the shroud and the head covering, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And that in itself could be a long, long story. I'll abbreviate it. I had a friend who I used to do a lot of hiking with, and one time on one of our hikes, I brought up the shroud without really even having known much about it. And he said, "Oh, that's all a hoax. That's been proven as just a false document or false cloth a long, long time ago." And it made me mad, not because he said that, but because I didn't have a response.
Oh, yeah.
And so I promised myself that I would never let that happen again on that subject. And ever since, I've been learning more and more, studying it. And I just think it's something that I've taken to the rest of my faith. Yeah, I don't know everything, but when I don't know, it's okay to not know once.
Right.
But not more than once.
Oh, that's a really good saying that we should all take to heart. Yeah. Okay. So what is, for anybody out there who does not know, what is the Shroud of Turin?
Well, the Shroud of Turin is a cloth. It's kept these days in Turin, Italy.
Okay.
And many believe that it is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. It has an image on it, which has a very interesting story to it as well, that is very consistent with the Passion.
Okay.
And then, of course, the other cloth that we talked about briefly, the head covering, is also believed to be the head covering from Jesus' crucifixion, and that's kept in Oviedo, Spain.
Ah, okay. So they're not kept together.
No.
Was that head covering, was he buried in that? Is that how that worked?
The head covering was applied when he was still on the cross, but after his death.
Okay.
Because the Jews believed that blood was the necessary energy for the dead person to travel from this world to the next.
Okay.
And so even when a person died a violent death, they tried to capture everything they could of their blood, even if it was on a cloth, and place it in the tomb with the person so they would have access to that blood for their travel to the next world.
Wow, I never knew that. That is super interesting. Okay, so you said one thing there that we're probably going to explain more, probably here. So what evidence do we have that this is real, first of all? And you said it may be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. So what evidence do we have that it is, or that we're pretty sure it is?
Okay. So first
and
of
this
all,
is now I want to preface this by saying, Deacon Radio does presentations on this that are like 40 minutes at the least. So he's trying to cram this into 20 minutes. So have at it.
Okay. So tell me again the question.
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. So what's the evidence that
sure.
that it's that it's from the time they say it is, and that it was Jesus's?
Well, first of all, the church does not tell us that we have to believe this. And I don't expect they ever will, because it's a matter of faith. But the overwhelming evidence to this point in time points to the fact that both cloths were in the tomb with Jesus, were the burial cloths and the head covering. A lot of just a little bit of the evidence. For one thing is that when you take the face of the image on the shroud and you put it in a computer and place the bloody head covering, which does not have an image on it, but it has blood stains all over it, and you superimpose one on the other. Every single wound mark on the head of the man on the shroud matches exactly with the blood patterns on the cloth believed to be the head covering.
Wow.
So that's one thing in itself. At least that speaks to the fact that both cloths came from the same man.
Right.
Secondly, the images are of a man that had a crown of thorns, and there's not another recorded instance of that in the history of the world where a man was crucified with a crown of thorns. And just maybe one final thing, there's all kinds of pollen samples on both cloths, most of which come from the Jerusalem area.
Okay.
And then some that can help us track the path that each cloth took to where they're being kept today.
Oh, okay. So Casey, I think Casey has an image of it. So if you're watching the video, you should be able to see an image of it. Casey will pop that up. But so what evidence do we have that it's? I know there was carbon dating done on it at one point. Was that proven incorrect? Because that carbon dating, from what I remember, whatever a number of years ago that was, said it wasn't as old as they said.
Right. In the 1980s, when carbon dating was a relatively new technology, there was a group of scientists that tested the cloth and did carbon dating and came out with findings that said it wasn't any older than the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they took a sample of the cloth that was a patch that was applied to the cloth in the Middle Ages by a group of sisters who were holding the cloth at that time, the shroud. So from that standpoint alone, it doesn't make sense. And it was published in Nature magazine, which is not really a scientific journal.
Right.
And Nature magazine itself has come out and disclaimed any further support for it because of the evidence that keeps coming out.
Right. And the way I understand it is that you can tell, okay, no, I'm going to let you tell it because you probably know this better than I do for sure. How can we tell that it was Jesus's crucifixion? Because certainly many people were crucified and wrapped in burial cloths. How do we know it's not just some other man who was crucified?
Well, the image, first of all, the cloths in new technology now have, new technology has found that these cloths are of the age of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
They're both the same cloth, the head covering and the shroud. So the dating of them goes back that far. The image itself, it just is such a beautiful image to reflect on in reflecting on Christ's passion, because it shows a man with wounds in his wrists where the nails would have been driven in. It shows his wound in the side. It shows all the wounds on his head from the crown of thorns. And it also, his body, front and back, is just covered with blood marks, scourge marks. And so there's all these things that are consistent with the Passion.
Yeah.
And yet, because of how the image appeared to us, there's no way that anybody could have made this image. Scientists are pretty much in agreement that the image was made in a way that we today cannot replicate.
That's incredible, because we can do a lot of things. So to be able to say that, I think really means something right now in our technology-driven age. If you just joined us, we're talking to Deacon Bill Radio about the Shroud of Turin. Okay, so I want to ask some different questions that aren't necessarily about the cloth. So what does the Shroud of Turin tell us about Jesus, the man, and about his crucifixion?
Okay. Well, first of all, one of the things that's really amazing about the image is science today can actually create a three-dimensional image of the man in the shroud. And I've seen the three-dimensional image.
Yeah.
I've been in the room with it.
Yeah.
And it is a man who is anatomically perfect.
Okay.
There is not a single broken bone.
Wow.
And as we know through the Gospels, they didn't break any of his bones, and this would confirm that. So there's that evidence as well. I don't know what
Trying
else.
to think of what other ones you might. Anything it tells us about the crucifixion.
It does tell us that this man,
Uh-huh.
in my belief, it's Jesus, was about 5'10",
Okay.
175 pounds, and 30 to 35 years old. Science can tell all that from.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
From that. So it really does line up with what we hear in the Gospels.
Yeah.
There's no doubt there.
Right.
I'm sure people could still find ways to, because I mean, will we ever know if it's really, really for sure? I don't think, right?
Well, I think that is why I believe, anyway, that the church does not tell us that we need to believe it's real, nor do I believe they ever will tell us that, because it's a matter of faith.
And they actually don't even say, don't confirm its authenticity either. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think they can just let science do that, because it's working very well so far to allow that to happen. Right. Okay. So, Deacon, this is, I think you mentioned faith. So if it isn't real, does it matter to our faith? And likewise, if it is, does it matter? And what does it mean?
What a great question. Just in a real quick answer, I would say, to me, when I look at those two cloths, and with everything I know about them, it helps me appreciate how much Jesus loves me.
Yeah.
And how far he was willing to go so that I could be with him if I choose to be. So from that standpoint, it's something that I think could help a person in their prayer life and their faith. But it's also one of the reasons why I think the church does not, and in my opinion will not, say that we have to believe it, because as soon as they do that, then they've made themselves and those cloths a target for so many rumors, so many unfounded things that get out there and just confuse people. So from that standpoint, if a person is not real strong in their faith and they start hearing all this stuff, it might create a problem for them.
Yeah. The way I understand it, you are traveling around the diocese.
I am.
So can you tell us, you just did was that yesterday? You did a good chunk of time with kids at O'Gorman. What is the presentation like that you're giving, and how are people receiving it?
Okay. Well, this year, for Lent, I like to travel around with it during Lent for reasons that it helps people prepare for Holy Week.
Yeah.
And this year I've been in Kimball. I've been in St. Therese here in town. I always do the presentation with our OCIA program here at the cathedral. And I was at O'Gorman Junior High for 5 classes yesterday.
You had to be tired after you were
And,
done.
and their classes are 42 minutes long, so that's how much time I had. When I was at the other places, my presentation was about an hour and 20 minutes plus questions.
Yeah.
But I've had, this year I tabbed up, there was about 400 people that heard my presentation just in the last few weeks. And the interest is just growing every year.
Yeah. Okay. So because you managed to fit a lot of things in 15 minutes, we have a few extra minutes. So I want to have you, when you're doing your presentations and you're talking about the cloth and the crucifixion, like what are the things that really stand out to people, do you think? Or maybe some of the most interesting parts of the cloth that you can share with us? And I'm throwing that at him out of the blue, so we might have to give him a second to think about that. I know.
So this relates to the cloth, but
Okay.
it's a point that people don't know. Every time I present this changes a lot for people.
Okay.
And it's from Luke's gospel, where he talks about Jesus' agony in the garden and how he was in such distress that he sweat blood.
Yeah.
And we know that this is a real phenomenon because we've had instances of that in modern day where people were so distressed that the capillaries along the surface or right under their skin merged with the sweat, and it came out as drops of blood. And so what we know from that is what happens, and that is that the skin becomes super sensitive to even a puff of air.
Wow.
And then when you start going through all the different wounds that we know Jesus had and that are shown on the shroud, with it just to be a place for people to visualize it, and they realize the hundreds of scourge marks and the crown of thorns and the nails and all of that was done to a man with super sensitive skin.
Yeah.
It's like during the agony, he was being prepared for the worst possible suffering imaginable.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big things when I do this presentation that really helps people kind of relate more deeply to the Passion.
Yeah. So do you think the movie, The Passion of the Christ, I know one of the initial kind of complaints against it was that it was very kind of brutal and very graphic. That made it maybe wasn't so far off. Then is that what you're telling us?
Not at all. Just when you look at the scourge marks on the shroud, there's hundreds of scourge marks, and on this man with super sensitive skin.
Yeah.
So in the Passion movie,
Yeah.
I think it's like something like 15 minutes they're scourging
Oh, yeah.
him. It's just hard to watch.
It is so hard to watch.
But it's not overdone.
Right. It's actually real what they did. Okay. I actually always wonder when I'm watching that movie, was he actually still alive to carry the cross? If it was that brutal, it's just kind of shocking to think that he was able to endure that. But he did it for us.
It is, and it's, when you consider he carried the crossbeam to Calvary, and that in itself weighed between 75 and 100 pounds, and after all he'd been through already,
Right.
It's just amazing that he made it.
Yeah. What kind of? I'm sure people talk to you after your presentations. What kind of things do people tell you? Kind of impact.
The stories. One of the things they're interested in, and it probably talks to how it affects them too, is of the people that have studied the shroud, have there been conversion stories?
Oh yeah.
And there's many.
Yeah.
And the church has allowed everybody from Catholics to Jews to atheists to study it. They've been very open with the cloth for scientific study. And I think that's one of the things people tell me is it just has helped them grow closer to their Lord and Savior.
Yeah, I think when you start to see real proof like that things happened as they say in the Bible. We know Jesus actually lived. I mean, that's, I think, without question. So when you start seeing that, it really does bolster your faith. And really, like you said, it's good to do it during Lent when we're about to. Well, actually, when this airs, it will be probably Easter. So I think it's good to remember those things and
absolutely.
ponder
It
them.
is if it's what we think it is, it's evidence of the resurrection.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, the week before this will air, we talked to Father Thuringer about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus was buried and rose. So that's where the shroud was once.
Yes, and I had the privilege of assisting one of our priests on a mass in the tomb on the shelf where Jesus' body was laid.
So beautiful. I bet that was...
My knees were shaking.
I bet they were. Deacon, where are you going to be presenting your presentation again soon?
I'm done.
You're done?
Well, I mean, I
well, by
really
the time this airs, it probably will be done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to talking to folks about it, but I really like to do it during Lent.
Okay.
And I don't have any more scheduled
Okay.
at this point.
So if someone's interested in hearing about it at their parish, they should make sure their parish reaches out to you before next Lent.
That would
so that
be my
you can get that
preference,
scheduled for next
yes.
year.
And we can put them on the calendar, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah. I think that would be great. I would love to see it. I wish I had known they were going on, except for today at O'Gorman. Deacon, it's always a treat to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for
really,
having
really
me.
appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Renee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to learn more about the Shroud of Turin, I'm sure you can find that online. I know if you even just Google it, there's a ton of information, lots of experts. Deacon Radio is going to be going to a conference, I believe, later on this year to meet some of those experts, so it should be really cool. You can also always find us on sfcatholic.org if you need anything from the diocese. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.